brand new car. I've never owned a brand new car before, and I will talk to you a bit about that in a minute. Why on earth did I buy a brand new car? And it's a question I'm kind of asking myself quite a bit as well. And there is a bit of a story behind this. So I sold my car back in end of March, beginning of April, and I was carless for a while. I was using we have a SQ5 as well, but my main car, the fun car, it was gone, and I had already started looking around at different cars, and my heart was pretty much set on one of these. Now, I've already put a video out around the review I didn't show you, which is when I went and test drove one of these. And as I've said in many videos before, I test drove a C63 and was massively underwhelmed. I used to love my naturally aspirated C63, and I thought, great, the option is that for the car I want is a C63 coupe, job done. It'll be a bit more fuel efficient than the old one because it's got the 4.2, blah blah blah. Anyway, so I went and test drove one. Firstly, the dealer basically didn't really care, considering how much the vehicle was worth. Took me on the most terrible test drive, which was basically a little bit of dual carriageway past where there was a speed trap, and then through some sort of urban roads, so no like country driving or anything like that. And I thought, God, for a car of this value, you really don't care. Anyway, it wasn't just about the experience, it was also about the car itself. Mostly they come with these really small wheels on, which don't look very nice, so you have to find one with the right wheels on. And secondly, it just really struggles to put the power down. It's a real typical muscle car, right? So it can put the speed down in a straight line, but corners and stuff, yeah, sort of fun, but I just didn't love it, I'm afraid. I test drove one of these, as you will see from that video, which I know isn't the best review video, but it's kind of more of my first reaction ever to it, and it just blew me away. It was just such a driver's car, so I knew I had to have one. I'd fallen in lust with this car at that point, so I set about my search, and what I realised is the car's only been around for about 2 years, and most of the ones I was looking at, which were sort of I think late 16, early 17 plate, they just looked tired, a lot of them. There was one in particular I was looking at, and I'd kind of set my spec, and interestingly I'd set a spec that included carbon back seats, but they're a £2.5 grand option, and what you'll find is a lot of people did not spec them, and for good reason, when they're £2.5 grand for some seats, when actually all you do is lose functionality. Anyway, we'll talk more about spec and stuff in another video. So I then found a car after many months of searching. I test drove a few at dealers, and one of them, I went to this dealer, I took a day off work, I drove all the way down there, and honestly, it was in terrible condition. The side skirts were all scuffed. Actually, the carbon trim along the edge actually had gouges out of it. How they did that. The tyres needed changing, bits inside didn't work, and I'm like, I've driven all the way down here for an almost £50,000 car, and you can't even get the car prepped. And then I was searching for what felt like an age. I knew every red Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio on the market, as I'm sure you guys know that experience when you've been looking for a car. And what I found was this red one, very similar to this. It was only 7 months old, I think, 8 months old. And this guy basically buys cars, keeps them for about 6 or 7 months, and then sells them. An expensive hobby. So I got into negotiations with this guy. He did not want to budge much, but you know, we got to a point where we were both happy, and it just took me a while to kind of get to know the guy. So firstly, there were just a few things that didn't ring true. You know, he had a private plate, and 1 minute he didn't want to get rid of it, and then he was like, no, fine, you can just take it with the car, just take it. And I just felt like he was trying to get rid of it too quickly. And to be fair, my assessments over these things I now know were wrong, but what this had done is pushed me up into a car that was a slightly newer model, and there were a few changes they made to this car, and the same as his one, which was the 2018 model. Silly things like split fold rear seats, which they didn't have in the previous version, but like if you take your skis in here, it's quite useful to have it, isn't it? It's silly not to have that. They put more fuel injectors in the engine to make it run more efficiently and a little bit better. I'm trying to remember what else the other changes were, but there were a few kind of like upgrades to the vehicle, which is kind of natural. You know, a car's been out in the market for a while, they get to learn, you know, what needs changing and what needs, you know, so at this point my search had changed, because the bit I haven't told you is that whole deal fell through. And really annoyingly, the big problem for that for me was the guy had a whole bunch of finance on the car, and I'd never bought a car off a private seller with finance on. So we were trying to work out how to do it, because what you don't want to do is hand over the, let's say, £40,000 worth of finance money to the finance company, because they won't give you the car until the finance is cleared, and the finance company say, oh, it might take 3 days, at which point you're like, what? However, there are other ways to do it, at which point it might take up to 3 hours. So you still need to spend 3 hours with an individual you don't know, wait for the finance to clear. Anyway, we looked at other options, decided it wasn't going to work. We're going to regroup at the beginning of the next week and say, right, okay, how are we going to do it? And I was going to suggest I stayed with him for 2 to 3 hours. I paid the money to the finance company. Once it cleared, I paid the balance to him, and then the car would be mine, because legally you're not allowed to also release the car to anyone until the finance is cleared. So that changed my whole narrative around how I was going to buy an Alfa Romeo Quadrifoglio. And look, my heart was set on these cars then. All of the ones I drove, I just loved. It brought a smile to my face, not when I'm doing 40 in a speed limited zone around the North Circular, but most of the time brings a smile to my face. And I'd test driven a few by that point. In fact, actually, did the one with scratches I did test drive, actually. It drove quite nicely, just was in terrible condition. So anyway, my heart was then set on this car that this guy had. The problem was, he then came back after the Monday and said, hey, do you know what? I've been to test drive some Porsches, which is what I was going to use the money for to buy, and I don't think they're as good as this car. I don't want to sell it anymore. So needless to say, I was quite pissed off. I'd spent about 4 or 5 hours of my time going there and back, at least probably maybe 6 hours, 3 times to go and see the car and have conversations with him. You know, an hour's at least worth of phone calls and conversations with the guy to get to the point where we could agree on what we needed to do. So got over that. Oh, and I'd spent money on the blooming HPI just to check it out, and anyway, that's all buried money. So at this point then, I was like, right, well, I need a 2018 car, at which I start looking around on the market, and there are next to none. A lot of people were selling their, and if you look on the forums, their 2016, 2017 cars to get the newer versions and get some of the benefits that brings. So that brings me onto a new car. So I started looking at new cars, and the long and the short of it is I found an amazing deal. I managed to speak to a great dealer. The dealer's near me, terrible. The dealer I went down to is a long way from me, but he was just brilliant. I went down there, took one for a test drive, had a long conversation with him. This guy knows Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio inside out. So we did the deal. And the other reason to do the deal is they now have, and I always get these numbers the wrong way around, this 353. Now, one of the biggest problems people have with Alfas are their reliability and things going wrong. So on this model, I get a 5-year warranty. Yes, a 5-year warranty. Basically, the only thing it doesn't cover are my brakes and my tyres. I also get I have to try it, 3-year servicing plan and a 5-year breakdown service. So all of a sudden, buying a new car seems like a much more attractive offer, especially when I've got no servicing costs for the next 3 years. Didn't tell me how to turn these bingings off. So, like, this whole package then, with getting a really good price on the car up front, and then having the peace of mind of having a 5-year warranty and a 5-year breakdown service. Now, as with all these things, a lot of cars come with breakdown cover, but for me, the warranty thing was really important. We have heard of a lot of people not having plain sailing on these cars, but I do wonder whether it's a bit of like what I now like to refer to as the McLaren syndrome. You know, there's a reason why people talk about bad things. You never call up customer services for, I don't know, your mobile phone company and say, hey, by the way, I made a phone call today, it was absolutely brilliant, it did just exactly what I wanted to do. No, you call them up when something goes wrong, when you can't make a call or your phone breaks. So, like, the stuff you tend to see reported, so reason being McLaren syndrome, is everyone talks about them catching fire, but actually there are hundreds of McLarens that are absolutely fine, and therefore you only really hear about the horror stories. And I think it's probably a bit similar with these. You know, there are a lot of people out there who are waiting for Alfa to fail, and so far, touch wood, 500 miles, this car's been brilliant. I love it. Do you know, one thing for me is getting back in an Alfa, and if you've watched any of my really early videos, I would have told you one of the reasons I like the 3-litre V6 in the F-Type, which, by the way, on reflection is nothing like this bad boy. But one of the reasons I like that was because years ago I had an Alfa Romeo GTV V6, and it wasn't a normal one. It had been played with by some tuning specialists. It had 4-quad stainless steel exhaust pipes, it had racing brakes on it. It was awesome. The main problem with it is it kept breaking, and my friends used to joke that I might as well turn the insurance to garaged because it spent so long in the garage. But when it went, I absolutely loved that car. The feedback it gave you, the driving experience was just brilliant. So getting back in one of these just feels like a familiar experience. I mean, obviously moved on and hopefully without those bad bits of the familiar experience. But this car just feels so tight and together, and I know it's in traffic, but it just looks great. And do you know the one thing I'd like to... So the one thing I would like to say to you guys, if you're not new here, if you are new, remember to go back and look at loads of my other stuff, and there's lots more to come, but I need to find out how to turn that beeping off, is the love this car is getting through all my social media and the comments, and even people I've met on like Roadster drives, is immense. And it was funny because I thought a lot of people loved my channel because they just loved the F-Type. You know, it had this just this following that was, I don't know, because it was a British car, because it had these beautiful designs and lines, they just, you know, a lot of people just loved it. And I did think, yeah, we know people might be a bit like, oh, why have you sold it? But when it comes to driving experience, it's a great car, the F-Type, but when you get in something like this, you realise the driving experience you get from it is just another level. It really is. And like, I talked to my first video about being incredibly excited. I genuinely am. Like, I've never ever owned a brand new car, and that was like a big deal for me, mostly because I thought the depreciation is absolutely insane. But in this instance, with the whole package, it kind of makes sense, and like, you know, that's where you have to do the numbers. But yeah, the support from everyone's been amazing, and I really appreciate that. I get that I haven't put out as much content as I would like. Life has been pretty busy, but I will continue to get out as much as I can about this car and take you on this journey. That's what this channel is about. Like, why I bought this car, like why I bought a brand new car. Bonkers, I know, but hopefully that makes a bit more sense. To me, just having a car that was 6-8 months old, not really knowing the history of it, and not getting the support of the warranty, which by the way is transferable, so if I bought one that was 6 months old, like the one I was looking at, I would have got the warranty, would have transferred with me. But like, to me, the peace of mind of that is just worth a lot of money. Anyway guys, thank you for watching Petrolheads London, listening to my big ramble. I hope you continue to watch lots of content about this car. Take care, and I'll catch up with you all soon. Cheers.